The saloon sold whiskey beneath a cloud of tobacco smoke. The drugstore sold respectability beneath clean glass. That difference mattered. In a western railroad town during the 1890s, a drugstore might be one of the brightest rooms on the street. Sunlight struck colored bottles in the front window. Drawers behind the counter carried Latin names. A brass scale waited beside a mortar and pestle. The air held the mixed smell of alcohol, camphor, licorice, soap, lamp oil, and dried roots. It looked orderly because much of it was orderly. A careful druggist measured powders by weight, rolled pills by hand, prepared tinctures, mixed ointments, and copied a physician's directions onto a label. Some prescriptions arrived on proper paper. Others came on scraps, with abbreviated ingredients and instructions that assumed the man behind the counter understood pharmaceutical Latin. But the same shelves also carried another kind of medicine. Its bottle was already filled. Its label promised relief before anyone had examined the patient. Its advertisement spoke with more confidence than most doctors. And until 1906, federal law usually did not require its maker to tell the customer everything inside. That was the hidden danger of the frontier drugstore. It was not simply a den of fraud, and the druggist was not necessarily a reckless peddler. The store could contain real professional skill beside industrial secrecy. A trained compounder might prepare a precise prescription at one end of the counter, while a brightly printed cure-all at the other end concealed alcohol, opium, morphine, cannabis, chloroform, or cocaine behind a pleasant name. The customers saw both products in the same trusted room. The bottles borrowed credibility from one another. For families scattered across mining districts, cattle country, railroad camps, and isolated farms, that credibility carried enormous weight. A physician might live miles away. A dentist might visit only occasionally. A toothache or crying infant could not always wait. The drugstore stood close. Railroads carried cases of bottled remedies, west with tools, cloth, canned food, and machinery. Newspapers carried the claims even farther. A product made in Albany or St. Louis could appear on a counter in a settlement whose streets still turned to mud after every hard rain. Among those products was a small remedy whose name now sounds like a confession: cocaine toothache drops. The Lloyd Manufacturing Company registered its advertisement in March of 1885. It promised an instantaneous cure. The price was 15 cents. The notice stated that the drops were for sale by all druggists. One surviving advertisement shows two children playing outside while the product's words cover a fence behind them. There was no whispered code. The cocaine was part of the sales pitch. A parent with a child suffering from an infected tooth did not need to meet a criminal, enter an alley, or deceive a pharmacist. The remedy belonged to the legal medical marketplace. Historical reviews of pediatric drug treatment note that cocaine toothache drops could be purchased over the counter for children. That fact requires care because it is easy to distort. The drops were not necessarily designed only for children, and cocaine was not placed into every bottle in a Western pharmacy. Many druggists understood that strong medicines demanded caution. Many patent remedies contained no cocaine at all. Yet the central fact remains: a child could be treated with a commercial cocaine preparation purchased openly from a drug counter. The sale could occur without a modern prescription, without a federally required safety review, and before reliable pediatric dosing had become a normal expectation. The bottle did something that made it especially convincing. It worked, at least for a while. Applied to painful tissue, cocaine could numb sensation. A desperate parent might watch a crying child become quiet and conclude that the cure had fulfilled its promise. The pain receded. The infected tooth remained. The substance itself introduced risks that the advertisement did not place in letters large enough to compete with the word instantaneous. This was the most dangerous kind of 19th century medicine, not a remedy that always failed, a remedy that produced an immediate effect while hiding the cost. To understand how cocaine reached that shelf, the story has to move east from the frontier counter, across the railroad network, through medical laboratories and manufacturing houses, and back to a discovery that physicians first greeted as progress. The bottle was not born in an outlaw camp. It came from modern medicine. Long before cocaine entered an American drugstore, indigenous peoples of the Andes had used coca leaves within their own social, medicinal, and spiritual traditions. The leaf and the refined chemical were not the same thing. Chewing or preparing coca leaves deliver their alkaloids differently from the concentrated cocaine products later manufactured in Europe and the United States. 19th century chemistry changed that relationship. European researchers isolated cocaine from coca leaves, and by the 1880s, the substance had attracted intense medical interest. In 1884, the Austrian ophthalmologist Karl Koller demonstrated cocaine's value as a local anesthetic for eye procedures. A physician could place it on tissue and reduce sensation without rendering the entire patient unconscious. That was a genuine medical breakthrough. Surgery had already been transformed by ether and chloroform, but general anesthesia carried serious danger and required control that a small frontier office did not always possess. A local anesthetic suggested something different. Pain might be stopped at the place where it began. Dentistry immediately offered an obvious market. Tooth pain was common, severe, and difficult to escape. Diet, limited dental hygiene, infection, injury, and scarce professional treatment could turn one damaged tooth into days of sleeplessness. Extraction remained a common answer, but the nearest dentist might be a long ride away. A topical drug that numbed the gum or tooth cavity seemed almost miraculous. Manufacturers moved faster than caution. The interval between Koller's medical demonstration in 1884 and the Lloyd cocaine toothache advertisement in 1885 was barely a year. The pattern would become familiar in American medicine. A promising substance left the laboratory, entered professional practice, gained public fame, and spread into commercial remedies before science had fully described its dangers. Cocaine was recommended for far more than dental pain. Physicians and promoters proposed it for hay fever, asthma, exhaustion, melancholy, and even dependence on alcohol or opiates. Medical journals debated doses while advertisements translated uncertainty into certainty. The frontier customer rarely saw that debate. He saw the label. She saw the newspaper claim. The druggist saw the wholesale price, the manufacturer's circular, and the demand from customers who had already learned the product's name. Inside the store, the dividing line between medicine and merchandise became difficult to see. Some cocaine was dispensed as a recognized pharmaceutical substance. Some appeared in proprietary preparations. Some druggists compounded their own remedies. The quality and concentration could vary, and the person buying the product might receive far less guidance than a modern patient expects. The scale behind the counter suggested precision. The market beyond it rewarded volume. Distance made that tension sharper because the druggist could become the nearest available advisor for almost every complaint. No national agency required a manufacturer to prove that a bottled remedy was safe before it reached the shelf. Ingredient disclosure was often incomplete or absent, while state pharmacy laws developed unevenly. The respectable druggist faced another problem. The patent medicine company often spoke directly to the public. Its advertisement might appear beside railroad schedules and land notices. Testimonials described recoveries that could not be checked. Drawings showed healthy mothers, peaceful babies, energetic workers, or children at play. The bottle arrived pre-sold. Refusing it meant arguing with a manufacturer and with a customer who believed the advertisement and wanted the promised relief. Cocaine's ability to numb pain gave the promise of physical demonstration. The mouth tingled. The ache softened. The customer could feel the medicine doing something, but numbness could not reveal inaccurate dosing, toxic reaction, or dependence. A quiet child did not prove a safe child. A vanished toothache did not prove a healed tooth. The same confusion appeared in many other remedies. The effect was mistaken for the cure. Alcohol created warmth. Opium suppressed coughing and diarrhea. Morphine produced sleep. Cocaine reduced sensation. Each visible result could strengthen trust while the underlying illness continued. For children, the margin for error was smaller. Dosing rules were inconsistent, and parents could repeat a dose when distress returned, unaware that the relief itself came from a powerful drug. And cocaine was only one bottle on the shelf. The remedies most deliberately placed into children's mouths often carried opiates. No product reveals the danger more clearly than Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup. Introduced in the 19th century, it was advertised to mothers as an answer for teething, colic, restlessness, and other childhood troubles. Its promotional images showed calm infants and composed women. The bottle promised domestic peace at a moment when many mothers were exhausted. Medical help was distant, and a baby's continuous crying could signal anything from ordinary teething to severe illness. The syrup contained morphine and alcohol. Parents did not always know it. According to the Drug Enforcement Administration Museum, some infants given the product went to sleep and never woke. The syrup remained available for decades, surviving even after physicians and reformers publicly attacked it. Its success exposes why the word quackery is not enough to explain the period. The parent was not foolish for wanting the child to stop suffering. The mother pictured in the advertisement was not choosing intoxication over care. She was being told that a prepared medicine, sold through ordinary commerce and wrapped in the language of health, was made for the problem in front of her. The product also delivered the result its buyer could see. The baby became quiet. The household rested. No label explained that silence could be a warning. Other soothing syrups, cordials, cough mixtures, and diarrhea remedies relied on opium or its derivatives. Laudanum was opium and alcohol. Paregoric was another opium preparation. They could relieve symptoms, but their availability also created dependence, poisoning, and fatal dosing errors. The drugstore could not always tell which outcome would follow. Neither could the family. That uncertainty existed beside impressive skill. A conscientious pharmacist knew how to grind bark, prepare a tincture, filter a liquid, combine powders, and divide a batch into pills. He might reject spoiled ingredients or catch a physician's error. Professional pharmacists spent the second half of the 19th century building schools, associations, standards, and state boards because they understood the harm caused by incompetent dispensing. Their work improved pharmacy. It did not immediately control the factory-sealed bottle. Many so-called patent medicines were not patented formulas. Their owners protected names, packaging, and advertising while keeping the contents secret. A memorable trademark could travel farther than the reputation of any druggist. Trust no longer required a personal relationship. It required repetition. The child in pain became part of that national market. A company did not need to know the child's weight, illness, other medicines, or distance from medical care. It needed a parent to recognize a symptom and match it to a promise. Teething, colic, cough, toothache, restlessness. One word on the label could replace an examination. This is where cocaine toothache drops belong in the larger story. They were shocking, but they were not an isolated piece of madness. They fit a marketplace in which powerful drugs were treated as useful ingredients first and public hazards later. Cocaine could be sold because it was legal, medically fashionable, and genuinely anesthetic. Morphine could calm an infant because it was a potent sedative. Alcohol could preserve a mixture and make the customer feel stronger. The danger grew from the same property that created demand. There was another contradiction. Recognized poisons might be kept in distinctive bottles or carry warnings, while a commercial remedy containing a habit-forming drug stood in a cheerful package covered with reassurance. The poison bottle looked dangerous. The family medicine did not. Children were especially vulnerable because most treatment decisions still occurred inside the home. Commercial medicine entered an older tradition of household care by presenting the bottle as its modern replacement. The mothers still administered the remedy. The corporation now chose the formula. That transfer of control happened quietly, one purchase at a time. Advertising changed the scale of trust. A local healer depended on remembered results. A national manufacturer could overwhelm bad experiences with new claims in new towns. Even when suspicion arose, a family had little power to test the bottle. Chemical analysis existed, but not on a kitchen table. The label controlled the story until a laboratory, journalist, physician, pharmacist, or reformer challenged it. By the end of the 19th century, those challenges were becoming louder. The drugstore's polished glass no longer hid the marketplace as completely as it once had. Physicians, pharmacists, chemists, state officials, women's organizations, and consumer advocates argued for stronger standards for years. Their difficulty was political as much as scientific. Patent medicine companies were major advertisers. Newspapers depended on their money, and manufacturers defended secret formulas as private property. The country also lacked a single standard. One state might license pharmacists or restrict poisons, while another imposed weaker rules. Interstate commerce carried the same remedy through that patchwork. Railroad expansion made the weakness impossible to ignore. The same network that moved settlers, cattle, ore, machinery, and mail also created a national market for medicine. A bottle could be manufactured in the East, advertised in hundreds of newspapers, carried through several states, stocked in a territorial drugstore, and administered on an isolated ranch. Responsibility dissolved along the route. The parent blamed the illness. The druggist trusted the wholesaler. The manufacturer pointed to satisfied customers. No federal authority had required proof before the sale. By the 1890s, the romance of the cure-all had begun to collide with laboratory chemistry. Analysts could identify alcohol, opiates, cocaine, and other ingredients hidden behind proprietary names. Medical journals published warnings. Professional organizations challenged products whose claims exceeded their evidence. Yet knowledge moved more slowly than advertising. A warning in a professional journal might never reach a farm family, while a painted sign remained on a wall long after a physician questioned its formula. Cocaine's reputation began to darken as reports of toxicity, compulsive use, and dependence accumulated. Physicians who had praised it as a treatment for opiate addiction discovered that one dependency could be exchanged for another. Medical enthusiasm did not vanish at once because cocaine still had real anesthetic value. The problem was no longer whether the drug did anything. The problem was who controlled it, how much was used, what the buyer knew, and what claims accompanied the sale. That distinction mattered for every strong medicine. Morphine could relieve terrible pain and still stop an infant's breathing. Cocaine could make surgery possible and still become dangerous outside careful dosing. The reformers' strongest argument came from this complexity. The public did not need a law declaring every powerful drug evil. It needed a label that told the truth. In 1905, Samuel Hopkins Adams began publishing The Great American Fraud in Collier's, exposing the claims and hidden contents of patent medicines. The series did not act alone. It joined decades of work by chemists, pharmacists, physicians, state officials, and organized women who had pressed for national protection. On June 30th, 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt signed the Pure Food and Drugs Act. The law prohibited interstate commerce in adulterated or misbranded foods and drugs. It required labels to disclose selected, dangerous, or habit-forming substances, including alcohol, morphine, opium, heroin, cannabis, and cocaine. For the first time, the small print had federal force behind it, but the law did not create the modern drug system in a single stroke. It did not require every new medicine to prove safety before sale, and its control over false therapeutic claims remained weak. Still, the bottle had changed. Before 1906, a remedy could legally keep important ingredients secret in ways that now seem almost unbelievable. After the act, the named substances could no longer hide as easily inside interstate products. The cocaine toothache bottle did not instantly become contraband. The morphine syrup did not vanish from every shelf. Disclosure was not prohibition. The Harrison Narcotics Tax Act of 1914 later used registration, taxation, and record-keeping to tighten control over opiates and coca products. Drug control would also become entangled with prejudice and criminal enforcement. The clean story would be that science discovered danger and government ended it. The real story was slower. Manufacturers resisted, courts limited, regulators adapted, and families kept buying what remained legal. Some medicines changed their formulas. Some survived for years. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup remained in commerce into the 20th century, despite its association with infant deaths. The Frontier Drugstore did not close when regulation arrived. It became part of a different system, one in which the label gradually carried more responsibility than the advertisement. That change had been purchased with evidence gathered from homes where the promised cure had produced a silence no parent expected. The title of this history is true, but not in the simplest way. Drugstores did not line up children and hand them cocaine as candy. The typical late 19th century cocaine user was more often an adult introduced to the drug through a physician, a medical preparation, or a tonic. Many Western pharmacists practiced with care, and many families used ordinary remedies without catastrophe. Yet cocaine preparations were sold legally at drug counters. Toothache drops advertised the drug by name in 1885, cost only 15 cents, and were offered through ordinary druggists. Children appeared in the surviving promotional image, and historical medical scholarship confirms that the drops could be bought over the counter for their treatment. The correction does not weaken the story. It makes the story more disturbing. The danger did not require an evil pharmacist or a secret criminal trade. It could emerge from a chain of people doing what the age considered normal. A chemist isolated a useful substance. A physician demonstrated real anesthesia. A manufacturer recognized a market. A newspaper accepted an advertisement. A wholesaler filled an order. A druggist stocked a remedy. A parent tried to stop a child's pain. Every step could appear reasonable. The complete system could still be unsafe. That was the machinery inside the Wild West drugstore. The mortar and pestle were only its visible tools. Behind them stood imported botanical drugs, industrial chemistry, trademarks, newspapers, railroads, professional ambition, domestic desperation, and laws that treated disclosure as optional. The Western setting intensified the consequences. Distance reduced choices. Harsh weather delayed help. Mining and railroad work produced injuries. Dust and smoke irritated lungs. Poor water and infectious disease caused symptoms that bottled medicines promised to silence. A family could not always wait for a distant doctor to arrive, and a local druggist could not perform laboratory analysis on every sealed product shipped into town. The shelf became a substitute for infrastructure. That substitute sometimes helped. Quinine could treat malaria. Antiseptics, when correctly used, reduced contamination. Measured compounds prepared by skilled pharmacists brought consistency to treatment. Cocaine itself became an important local anesthetic in professional medicine. The same shelf could also conceal the difference between relief and safety. That difference is the central lesson of the bottles. Pain relief was visible. Dependency developed over time. Sleep was visible. Respiratory suppression was harder to recognize. A quiet cough was visible. Pneumonia remained inside the chest. A numb tooth was visible. The infection stayed beneath it. Patent medicine advertising built its power on what a customer could observe immediately. Regulation had to concern itself with what the customer could not see. Modern barriers around strong drugs emerged because courage and experience could not identify an undisclosed chemical. No amount of frontier self-reliance could read a secret formula. The mother holding a teething child lacked the information needed to judge the bottle. The druggist stood behind products formulated in distant factories. Each person carried responsibility, but the manufacturer controlled the most important facts. The Pure Food and Drugs Act began to reverse that imbalance by forcing certain ingredients into the open. Later laws went farther. The old drugstore therefore deserves neither simple nostalgia nor easy contempt. Its carved cabinets, glass jars, brass scales, and handwritten labels belonged to a serious craft. The pharmacist often knew the community better than any distant institution did. But trust can magnify danger when information is withheld. The cleaner the counter looked, the less reason a customer had to question the bottle upon it. Near closing time, the druggist lowered the lamps. Reflections faded from the cases. Outside, a locomotive sounded beyond the last row of buildings. On the shelf, the remedies waited without distinction. One held a useful compound mixed with skill. One held mostly alcohol wrapped in extravagant claims. One could quiet an infant with morphine. One could numb a child's tooth with cocaine. Their packages did not reveal the difference clearly enough. That was why the most important invention in the drugstore was not another tonic, extract, syrup, or powder. It was the truthful label. Until that label carried the weight of law, the Frontier family bought more than medicine. It bought the manufacturer's version of reality. Sometimes the bottle eased pain. Sometimes it postponed real treatment. Sometimes it created the illness it claimed to cure. And sometimes, in a quiet house miles from the nearest physician, a remedy sold for a child made the room silent.